Here's an insect look that's easy to mix up with a plant. In what way do crocodiles lure birds? What's a bluff master from the world of snakes capable of? Now you'll learn everything. In this episode, I'll tell you about animals with the most creative traps. Snakes are insanely nasty and dangerous creatures. Absolutely no adequate person is in a hurry to contact them. However, the world is full of professionals who see nothing terrible in catching snakes. For them, this occupation looks quite ordinary, especially if you take into account how amazing snares they're able to invent. And here, by the way, is one of them. With the help of a homemade installation, the man managed to catch a snake without any physical contact with it at all. As soon as the snake crawled out of its lair, it immediately fell into the snare, and it had nothing to do but wait for a man to pull it out of there. It looked incredibly easy and simple, but I'm sure only the most experienced snake trapper could make such a snare. It's not only people who are famous for such miracles. The animal world is also full of skillful creatures coming up with the most unusual and sophisticated methods aimed at catching the prey they're interested in, and the spider-tailed horned viper is one of them. If you do not look at this photo, it may seem that it's an ordinary small spider that's in front of us, crawling somewhere up the rocks, right? Now take a closer look. What, still haven't spotted one? Actually, it's not a spider, but a viper whose tail imitates an arthropod. The idea of such a tail for us humans is very clear and understandable. However, the animals that cannot think straight catch on the bait. This is especially true of birds rushing to their death at the first sight of a spider. While we're talking about spiders, let's pay attention to the arthropods themselves. They can also easily surprise. What you're watching now is called stabilimentum, or simply a pattern on the web. The shapes of the stabilimentum come in many different forms, from a vertical stripe to a cross, disc, or spiral pattern. In any case, regardless of what a spider decides to depict, it does it for the sake of additional mechanical strengthening or the catching network. At least this is what scientists used to believe. However, they soon began to gradually move away from this version. The fact is that the stabilimentum is often too weakly attached to the rest of the web to somehow affect its stability. In this scenario, it's much more likely, and even romantic, that spiders make these patterns to attract their soulmates. There's also a third theory concerning the main purpose of the patterns on the network. They say that they're primarily needed to attract prey. After all, the patterns reflect ultraviolet light, and many insects quickly fly to such radiation. Moreover, this function is confirmed in many studies. Although there is a chance that the patterns are used by spiders so that predators and other dangerous creatures would not burn with the desire to come visit them, perhaps the white pattern visually exaggerates the size of the host spider and thus scares away its enemies. Orchid mantis. This is the name of a species of mantis that has an extremely unusual coloration, making it look like a flower. These mantises live in the tropical forests of India and Indonesia. They're engaged in eating insect pollinators. As you may have already guessed, in order to dine on such creatures, these mantises successfully use their innate features. To resemble flowers in the process of evolution, the females of the orchid mantis become brighter and larger. That made them almost indistinguishable from a flower, both visually and in the ultraviolet range. This allows predators to perfectly attract insect pollinators that foremost recognize the presence of symmetry, orientation, pattern, complexity of the corolla, and other things in the flowers. Moreover, as scientists have found out, their enemies, birds and reptiles, also take them for flowers. For example, a hungry lizard can calmly pass by a potential victim and not even notice it. However, looking like a flower is not enough. The females also use chemical compounds for greater effect. I won't go into details, but their essence is that when the insect flies over the mantis, it unwinds its head and emits attention-getting substances towards the potential dinner. The insect catches them and is even more tempted, so much that even if something embarrasses the victim, it's highly likely that it will still descend into the hungry clutches of the mantis. Researchers have found that sexually mature females that don't produce these substances are much more likely to miss their prey. Firefly squid. What do you think a creature might glow in the dark for? Perhaps to attract members of the opposite sex? Or for hunting? Oh, or perhaps for protection? Or for everything at once? The firefly squid is a mollusk that can do all of these things and more, and now I'm going to tell you more about it. Let's start with the first and most important function of the firefly, to find prey. This firefly, despite its rather modest size, is used to feeding on even smaller creatures like fish, plankton, or larvae. Chase such crumbs, no respect for themselves because this process would require titanic efforts at his size. Here, squid solve the problem ingeniously. The mollusk emits a glow and makes all around swim to him. The trickster himself has nothing to do but to grab the prey in range and do this timely. The second most important function of the glow is defense. Of course, when you emit an intriguing light, it's not only all sorts of minnows but also really large and dangerous creatures that can swim to you. Even at that rate, the firefly squid learned to turn things in his favor. In this case, he gives a series of bright flashes. Most fish equate the concepts of danger and unknown, so they prefer not to risk scales and do not eat a strange flashing creature. By the way, sadly, such a technique does not work in daylight, and that's why the squid also has to come up with a strategy for daytime survival. Surprisingly, he doesn't stop glowing. The glow blurs its shadow and makes our firefly harder to spot. One last function is, of course, romance. Well, what's a date setting without brightly colored candles, right? Every spring, the males rise to the surface and fire up their photophores, their glow organs, at full throttle. They only have a couple of days to find a mate. People have learned about this and have traveled to the Japanese shores to see this beauty for themselves. Would you like to see it for yourself? The creatures we've looked at today are different from what we're used to. They're not lions, tigers, or crocodiles that take their opponents by brute force. Although, wait, it seems that even crocodiles have learned to make a clever move that helps them get their sustenance. We're talking about a marsh representative of the order that lures birds to twigs. And as the researchers note, marsh crocodiles do this exclusively in the season when birds need building material for nests. It looks as follows. The crocodile finds branches somewhere on land and puts them on its face. It swims into the water, somewhere not far from the shore, sits down comfortably and begins to wait. And it obviously doesn't have to wait long. Birds often build themselves houses and want to make them as bright, large, and colorful as possible. Building material in such a case will never be superfluous. Besides, when searching for branches, you will rarely keep in your head the idea that there's a trap somewhere. Only time will tell how swamp crocodiles got this way of thinking and whether it's true of many other species of these same predators. So far, scientists have no definitive answer. Bobbit worm. If danger awaits the creatures right on the shore, then we should expect something murderously strange in the great depths, especially since the Australian bobbit worm has been doing its devious deeds there for a long time. This predator lives on the ocean floor, usually at a depth of 30 to 130 feet. The length of adults can easily reach 10 feet, so there are no restrictions in terms of choice of prey for this worm. It can get almost anyone for lunch. The more so that to oppose anything to his style of hunting is very, very difficult. When this predator is in an ambush, it sticks out of the bottom, not completely. Only the necessary parts of the body remain outside for hunting: antenna and jaws. Drawing an analogy with humans, only the eyes and mouth are visible. The face with other parts of the body are hidden underground. Whiskers of the worm catch even the slightest changes in light. Its jaws are always open and like a trap. As soon as its enemy swims by, the bobbit worm's jaws will instantly close. The victim will probably say goodbye to its life. Although, if scientists are to be believed, this creature is often wrong and the enemy remains unharmed. The worm will no longer stalk it. However, don't worry, this monster is not very upset by failures. Its appetite is what it needs, so it will gladly arrange a new ambush and will repeat the exercise with even greater adventurism. The predator copes with large fish due to fast-acting toxin. The substance immobilizes the unlucky inhabitants of the sea so that the bobbit worm can eat without hurrying. Nature has made sure it doesn't choke. And here's another creature that evolution has taken good care of. It's made it so that the pharaoh cuttlefish would learn to take the form of other creatures to convert into them, just like a transformer. To do this, the cuttlefish lifts the first pair of tentacles and makes them slightly darker. It then changes the appearance of a second and third pair of tentacles by spreading them apart and also bending them. The result is a crab-like creature, a hermit crab moving along the bottom. The pharaoh cuttlefish demonstrates this behavior in captivity after it's placed in a large new space, or if it sees victims, small fish. Whatever the case, it always has an advantage. Predators will not pay excessive attention to her because they'll think that the hermit crab is too dense and hard prey. On the other hand, small fish will lose their former vigilance. They're used to the fact that the hermit crabs are not a threat. trick up your sleeve. Have you ever heard of the Western hognose snake? Something tells me it's very unlikely. Take it from me, it's definitely worth your attention. This non-venomous crawler from the family Colubrids caught the eye of the author of the following video and behaved in a way you certainly did not expect. First, the snake decided to pretend to be a cobra and started hissing and inflating the skin on its body. Then, when it realized that this method didn't work, the crawler pretended to be dead, and it did it as skillfully as possible. It seems to me that even the best actors of our time are not capable of such a feat. Moreover, if you believe the stories of experts, this is not the limit of its abilities. They say that the snake can bite at thin vessels and bleed from the mouth, as well as emit a nasty odor for the best effect. This will inform the enemy that it's better not to do anything with this individual. The length you have to go to survive. Mimic octopus. Do you remember looking at the mollusk that pretended to be a hermit crab earlier today? Well, it turns out that there are even more professional actors in the world of mollusks. Those are the mimic octopuses. These representatives of the order reach 2 feet in length and are primarily known for their ability to imitate the appearance and behavior of other organisms. One time, this octopus can be seen in the image of a sea tongue that crawls along the bottom. Another time, the mimic octopus will appear in the form of a lionfish, drifting slowly over the bottom. Its fins will be relaxed and ripple only occasionally. And when this octopus needs to appear as dangerous as possible, it will pretend to be a poisonous snake, hiding 6 tentacles in its hole. Meanwhile, the other 2 will expose, orienting them in different directions. Strangely enough, this trick almost always works, and enemies do not dare to attack it. Rain to the rescue. The fact that animals can invent this or that cunning way to catch enemies, or conversely to scare away strong predators, this sounds quite natural and normal. We're used to it. But did you know that plants are not lagging behind in this respect? A tropical carnivorous plant from the order pitcher plants has a completely new mechanism for catching prey that I'll tell you about in a moment. Let's start with the fact that plants had to develop special mechanisms for generating fast movements to catch insects without the possibility of using muscles as an animal. To do this, they redistribute small volumes of water in their traps to accumulate elastic energy. Then the right moment comes and it's released to reliably capture the prey. There's no doubt that this method is highly effective. At the same time, it also spends a huge amount of energy and requires a lot of time for the so-called recharging. The predatory plants of this order decided not to rely on speed and took a slightly different route. They started to lure insects to them with immobile pitcher traps formed by special leaves. Insects are attracted to the sweet, fragrant nectar on the slippery neck of the pitcher. In its pursuit, the victim slips into the liquid-filled trap where it sinks and is digested. It turned out that this very lid has a unique structure and turns literally into a gymnastic springboard for any insect that appeared on its lower part during the rain. As soon as drops fall on a leaf, this negligible force becomes more than enough for the springboard to tilt a little and throw the victim down. At the same time, the lid will lift back up almost immediately, very easily and smoothly. Sleep is an important part of each animal's life on Earth. Later on, I'll tell you about how differently animals sleep. Crocodile. Let's start with these famous toothy creatures. They have the most powerful bite in the world among land animals. They can eat anyone, including very strong and large prey, which means that after this, they need to digest everything properly and sleep. The crocodile's sleep is different. But one thing is invariable. These reptiles sleep a lot, at least 17 hours a day. Most of all, the crocodiles like to sleep in shallow water. It dives into the water half, keeps its head on the surface of the water, or puts it on the shore and thus sleeps and cools down at the same time. Crocodiles have unihemispheric slow-wave sleep. That is, only one hemisphere of their brain sleeps. The second is vigilant, so if anything happens, the crocodile will be ready to instantly attack anyone who dares to disturb its peace. If there's no water nearby, the crocodile can fall asleep in the traditional way, just lying down. In this case, however, crocodiles often open their mouths. No, not to show their aggression or something like that. These reptiles don't sweat, so this way they just cool down in their sleep because they live in hot places. Well, in rare cases, the crocodile can cosplay a human and try to sleep on its back. Several times crocodiles were noticed sleeping in this position. To see such an unusual phenomenon is rare because in such a position the crocodile is vulnerable. Sperm whale. Next, we have the largest predator of the planet. Not kind but toothed whale, the sperm whale, which, unlike the good whales, feeds not on plankton and krill, but on giant squids up to 60 feet long. But that's not the point now. We're interested in the sperm whale's sleep, and it's super short. Scientists believe that the sperm whale sleeps the least among all animals in the world. These whales sleep from 10 to 15 minutes, wake up, swim, eat, and then sleep a little again. If a person on average sleeps about 30% of the total time in a day, then in the sperm whale this value does not exceed 7%. It's a little more than an hour and a half a day. As you've already noticed, their sleeping position is interesting. Sperm whales sleep vertically, and they do it near the surface. Everything's logical here. The sperm whale, like other mammals, breathes with its lungs and cannot stay underwater forever, so it needs to take in air sometimes. The sperm whale very slowly and smoothly sinks to the bottom and then makes a sharp swish with its tail and quickly rises back to the surface. After taking a gulp of air, it starts dozing again and slowly sinks back down. By the way, both hemispheres of the brain stop active work simultaneously in sleeping sperm whales. Dolphin. And this is a completely different case. In dolphins, one of the brain hemispheres is always active, and this manifests itself, among other things, in sleep. You've probably heard that dolphins sleep with one eye open. Well, it's true. This is the very manifestation of one hemisphere at work. And again, it makes sense. Dolphins are mammals, so they can't stay underwater all the time. The awake part of the brain signals when to come to the surface to breathe if the dolphin's sleeping. After about 2 hours, the brain hemispheres switch so the working hemisphere can rest. In addition, one open eye allows dolphins to monitor the situation around them. Who knows, maybe some hungry predator will swim by. In this case, the dolphin will be able to react and defend itself or save its babies. In addition, the open eye allows dolphins to avoid bumping into obstacles because they can move in their sleep. This usually happens when dolphins sleep in a pod. A group of mammals falls asleep and slowly drifts underwater. There's also the more traditional way. Simply fall asleep in a horizontal or vertical position, and some dolphin species can fall into a deep sleep, floating on the surface of the water like a log. Sea otter. Otters are different. There are, for example, giant otters, the largest among all otters on the planet. They look formidable, are up to 6.5 feet long, and are very dangerous. A family of giant otters can kill even an anaconda, a jaguar, or a caiman. And then there are sea otters. They're smaller, not so dangerous, and most importantly, they're very cute. The cuteness manifests itself in their sleep. Sea otters sleep more romantic than any other animals on the planet. They sleep in pairs in the water, holding each other's hands in their sleep, and sometimes literally hugging each other. Although it looks insanely touching, sea otters do it not to show their love, they do it to avoid being swept away by the current. In such pairs, one otter sleeps and the second one stays awake, keeping an eye on the situation and fighting the currents if necessary. If there is no sleep partner nearby, the sea otter can use a life hack. It wraps itself in seaweed and thus reduces the chance that it'll be carried away by the current somewhere far away in the sea or the ocean. It should be said that proper sleeping skills in the water are very important for sea otters because they rest and sleep for about 11 hours a day. Sometimes you wish you could become a sea otter or a crocodile for a week to get a good sleep, but I'm sure many of us sleep about as little as the next creatures of the episode, elephants. As for the sleep duration in captivity, elephants sleep from 3 to 7 hours a day, but in the wild they sleep only a couple hours a day. And I'm talking about the total duration. In general, elephants rarely sleep more than 40 minutes at a time. At the same time, they're light sleepers. Even in their sleep, elephants continue to hear everything that's happening around them. This is necessary so that in case of a threat to life, the giants can quickly react and escape. As a rule, they sleep standing up. Their body structure allows them to relax and nap in this state without any discomfort. Elephants usually sleep in a tight group, but sometimes elephants can lie down on the ground and sleep in a human way, if I may say so. Paradoxically, their sleep is more dangerous in this state. Scientists believe that because of the huge mass of the giants, in the lying position, they can injure their internal organs themselves if they sleep longer than they should. In this respect, by the way, elephants are similar to another giants, giraffes. These tall animals can also sleep standing or lying down, But unlike elephants, these animals with long necks prefer to lie down and sleep on the ground. The main problem here is to put the neck so that it doesn't get in the way. To do this, the giraffe curls up and bends its neck so that its head is on its butt or its hind limb. Giraffes sleep longer than elephants, but by our standards, they hardly get enough sleep. They rarely sleep more than 4 to 5 hours a day. Many animals are lucky that they can stop, find a secluded place, and sleep for at least a few hours, but there are some that sleep on the move. The common swift is a perfect example. These animals are very interesting. First, they fly the fastest in the world, if we're talking about the classic horizontal flight, 69 miles per hour. And secondly, common swifts fly literally all the time. Except for a couple of months of mating period, which these birds spend on the ground, they spend all their time in the air, not stopping flying. On the fly, they catch insects to feed on, drink water from rivers, and sleep. They sleep like dolphins, leaving one hemisphere of the brain or the other to work. In order not to crash into anything while sleeping, common swifts fly high into the sky, glide at high altitude, and occasionally move their wings. In this way, they save energy and rest, preparing to regain full speed after waking up. Sharks. These toothy and dangerous sea creatures are somewhat similar to common swifts. They too are constantly on the move, and unlike swifts, this is vital for them. Most shark species need to move constantly to keep breathing. This is because sharks don't have a swim bladder, which allows other fish to hang motionless in the water. The shark's body is denser than the water it displaces, so the shark can only stay afloat if it's constantly moving. If the shark will not move, it'll go to the bottom and, as paradoxical as it may sound, may even drown, because only in motion sharks are able to pump water through the gills and breathe. And if the shark doesn't drown, it may be crushed by pressure as it goes to the bottom. For this reason, many people believe that sharks do not sleep at all, but this is actually not true. Sharks can sleep, but not for long, only about an hour, because otherwise they'll die from lack of oxygen, which they receive during movement. And some shark species, those that are benthic, have learned to sleep by pumping water through their gills. They lie down on the bottom, use the opening and closing of their mouth, and synchronized work of the gill muscles and pharynx. There are also cunning sharks that choose places in the ocean with active water and currents. Thus, the water itself enters their gills, the fish will not drown, will not go to the bottom, and can sleep a little. But no matter how you look at it, its sleep will be short. I'm sure many sharks would like to get a good sleep and are jealous of animals that spend much more time in the dream world. By the way, do you know what creature sleeps the most? It's the koala. Just imagine, the koala can sleep up to 22 hours a day. That is, it sleeps practically all day long. All digits of the koala's forepaws end with strong claws. This allows the animal to effectively grip the branches of trees, closing the forepaws in a secure lock. And it helps a young koala to cling tenaciously to the mother's fur. In this position, the koala can sleep very long and comfortably. The fact that koalas are sleepyheads is simply explained. These Australian animals feed on eucalyptus. It's poorly nutritious, and koalas have a slow metabolism. They eat little, rest a lot, and constantly stay in energy-saving mode. What can lift your spirits better than cute animals? They're adorable babies. Next, I'll show you the cutest baby animals you haven't seen in person yet. Many of you are used to seeing horses, big, proud, and strong, galloping across the field. But could you imagine that this stately animal was such a sweetheart as a baby? Take a look at this little horse, the mere sight of which brings smiles to your face. How great this foal is on its feet, isn't it? By the way, did you know that foals spend about 11 months in the womb before getting on their hooves? Just one day after being born, this creature can already walk, and in another day it's quite likely to run.
Hi, you're really cute. Hello. You're seriously cute. Hello.
Baby goat. This cutest creature is even smaller than the foal. The little baby goat is covered with spots, which looks very nice. It has a thin tongue and a small mouth, which makes it tries to say something to the person in front of it. It makes you want to take this baby home and raise it as a pet, just like a dog. Curiously enough, the baby goats really do look a lot like dogs. According to scientists, they were domesticated more than 9,000 to 10,000 years ago. However, there's a separate species, mountain goats, which cannot be kept at home. They're not suited to such an environment. Chameleons. Next, we have some of the most interesting lizards on Earth. They've been able to change their body coloration depending on their light, ambient temperature, and humidity since they were babies. Or, for example, depending on their mood. As soon as this curious creature is born, it immediately runs into the bushes because hunger gets the better of it. In the grass, it can hide from predators and eat insects. At first, hatchlings end up in trees where their mother gives birth to them. Usually, about 14 little chameleons are born, and they stick to the branches only because of the egg grease in which they're born. And as soon as the hatchling falls to the ground, it receives a kind of signal that it's time to become more independent. Now the lizard goes in search of food and shelter. The females do not take care of their babies in any way. Seal. Pups, otherwise known as baby seals, have especially large and beautiful eyes, as well as fluffy fur. Am I the only one who really wants to pick them up and cuddle them? Write in the comments if you have similar emotions. However, I have to disappoint you, it won't last long. At first, the pup has a weight of about 17.6 pounds and a greenish coat. After a couple of days, the color of the coat changes to white, and now the baby can be rightly called a white coat. With this coloring, the baby easily hides in the snow and avoids dangerous creatures. After a few more weeks, the mother stops feeding its baby and it begins to molt. Well, the last stage of growth can be considered the one where the baby completely throws off its thick and so nice fur. It's at this stage that the little seal will get used to hunting as well as diving and swimming. Chipmunks. Even the most calloused person on Earth would love these rodents. The little creatures are so cute and beautiful from infancy. Not many of them are born, usually up to 6 in a litter. All of them are bald at first. However, fairly quickly the little chipmunks grow fur. Only 14 days are enough. At the end of another week, chipmunks will open their eyes, and at 120 to 150 days they'll leave their own shelter and begin full adult life, which, by the way, lasts about 2 to 4 years. Father's son. And these are penguins. The creatures in the video look like toys or computer graphics. They're so cute and unusual. Curiously, as soon as a baby penguin is born, the female gives it up completely, and the chick is raised by the father. The father even feeds the chick with its milk. This continues until the chick grows wings. Usually by that time, it's almost reached its full size. The babies eat what their father burps up for them, half-digested crustaceans and the like. The safest place, according to penguins, is this, down by daddy's belly. It must be really warm and safe because penguins come into the world without feathers, which means that it's not so easy for them to get warm. But it's really no big deal because feathers grow up in about a couple of weeks. Armadillo. Next up is an animal that has a hard coating on its back. Its shell is a complete bone derived from its spine. And in fact, the shell is not the only proof that their bodies are well developed. For example, armadillos can fully move around just a few hours after birth. However, at that point, they'll be without their shield from danger. The baby spends its first time with its mother. Initial development may take several years. All this time, the shell hardens and the armadillo learns to eat full-fledged adult food. Sloth. This is the creature that, in the eyes of most people, is the standard of all that is slowest. But do you know why this creature is so slow? The fact is that the sloth is one of the most efficient creatures. It has only 25% muscle tissue and a very low metabolism. Because of this, it moves only when it really needs to, walking 10 feet per minute. Nevertheless, if it needs to run somewhere fast or do something else, it can easily cope with such a task. The cubs appear in a tree where their parents spend most of their time. From the earliest minutes of its appearance, the baby learns to be independent. It itself has to climb up the mom's fur. Since climbing trees is even harder, it's the only option for survival. At the age of 9 months, the baby leaves its mother and moves to another place, turning it into its territory. By about 2.5 years of age, the cubs reach the size of adults. A strange animal. What do you think this little creature is? At first glance, it looks like some kind of alien. But in fact, it's a well-known mammal, echidna. This amazing animal appears from eggs, and its body's covered with spines. To make it easier to understand, in the case of the echidna, the spines are analogous to hair. Just so you understand, once the puggle's born, it can weigh less than a gram. The baby then grows in a pouch, feeding on milk for 2 months, so it gains weight quickly. And after a couple of weeks, it'll weigh about 18 ounces. Koala. This marsupial herbivore always evokes a lot of positive emotions in people. Especially when they come across a still small creature, the look of which makes you smile involuntarily. By the way, did you know that the word koala comes from an Aboriginal word that means no drink? It's not that they don't drink water themselves and don't need it, but that they get it from food or by other means. For example, they get their moisture not only from the leaves they eat, but also from licking tree trunks. Joeys are born weighing only a few grams. They look like jellyfish. They have no ears, no fur, and in general they see nothing. But that's only for now. After 6 months, which the little koala spends in its mother's pouch, the baby begins to resemble an adult. It travels on its mother's back for a while, and then it goes on to full life. Polar bear. And this is a very strong, dangerous, and ferocious creature. However, as a baby, it's the opposite, just like everyone else. At a young age, the polar bear is incredibly cute, and you just want to squeeze it. Polar bear cubs are born blind. Their fur is quite short. It's definitely not long enough to survive in the harsh environment. For this purpose, the cubs are placed in special shelters prepared in advance by the mother. Usually, the female makes a full-fledged tunnel up to about 10 feet long, in which its newborn baby, which weight is about 2 pounds and length is about 8 to 12 inches, would fit comfortably. Pretty quickly, the first 5 weeks fly by, and the young polar bear can already open its eyes. In another 2 weeks, it'll be able to walk. Elephants. These are incredible animals that always amaze people with their enormous size. As a calf, however, this creature is no less cute than any other. While elephants are still small, they weigh about 200 to 260 pounds. Also, these guys from birth are very strong and independent. A few hours after birth, the elephant can already move independently, following the herd. However, this is the exception rather than the rule. Usually, parents give a baby a little more time to get used to the environment. Usually, it's a couple of days. In general, this kind of care and gestures of attention and concern are given by parents from 3 to 9 years until the next birth of the female. It's only at this considerable age that the baby elephant will have the size and capabilities to fend for itself. Hedgehog. Many people have seen this animal in their country houses, but not many people have personally encountered a cute baby hedgehog. Isn't it cute? And now you're watching a relatively mature animal. From birth, hedgehogs are about 2.5 inches long, see nothing, and are completely naked. The baby impresses with an unprotected bright pink skin. The only things hoglets are capable of at birth is crawling and squeaking. Nature gave them these skills for a reason. The first is for moving around, and the second is for their mother to find them by the sound. There are animals in the world that you can hear at a distance of dozens and even hundreds of miles. Later on, I'll tell you about them. Let's start with a creature that could potentially claim to be the loudest on the planet. Why potentially? Because its existence has not yet been confirmed, but it's also possible that such a creation exists. I'm talking about the bloop. This is how scientists named the mysterious and anomalous sound which was recorded in the Pacific Ocean in 1997. It was anomalous because it was recorded at a distance of 3,100 miles. As scientists say, this sound resembled the one made by whales or dolphins, but even if it were the largest whale of all time, it wouldn't be able to make such a sound. That's when theories began to be put forward that the sound was made by an unknown creature. It was called the bloop after the sound it made. According to theorists who made calculations, the bloop should be 650 to 1,000 feet long and make such a loud sound. I don't know whether it's a coincidence or not, but even some reputable oceanographers and travelers claiming they once saw something abnormal under the water, the size of which was baffling. Were they imagining, or did they see that very bloop? It's unknown, and it's not clear what's even better. Well, now let's move on to the loud animals that definitely exist. And let's go in ascending order. First is the lion. The kings of the jungle have impressive vocal skills. Lions can hiss, bark, and even purr. But of course, their main sound is their trademark roar, which can be shocking. You bet, the powerful roar of the lion is spread across the savanna and can be heard up to 5 miles away. With its roar, the king of the jungle can easily frighten its enemies and make them freeze in terror. Lions also roar at male congeners, which have a claim on something. In addition, roaring is used as a communication tool. By roaring, lions can mark the territory they occupy. In this way, they can make it clear where their pride is and also persuade other lions to stay out of their territory and occupy some other part of the savanna. This area, by the way, can be huge, up to 40 square miles or more. I forgot to mention that the lion's roar is about 114 decibels loud. This is comparable to the sound of thunder or very heavy traffic. The next animal in this episode has this figure of 120, which can be compared to the volume of a rock concert or an airplane at takeoff. And interestingly, this animal is dozens of times smaller than a lion. I'm talking about locusts. You've all probably heard these insects chirping. They do it loudly, so there's nothing striking about it. But it's still amazing when you find out what even a single locust can do. The loudest insects on the planet use a special sound membrane driven into oscillation by muscles. The resulting metallic sound resonates in special cavities inside the body and reaches an unusually high volume of sound. Often, the sound of locusts can be heard at a distance of over 1,300 feet. You may ask, why then can a lion be heard farther away if it roars quieter than a locust? It's all about frequencies. Locusts are very small insects that produce sounds at high frequencies. These frequencies are physically perceived quieter than the low roar of the king of the jungle, hence the difference in distance. What's also interesting is that locusts chirp mostly during the hottest time of the day, as heat is an important source of energy which the insects spend on singing. White bellbird. The sound of insects can be maddening sometimes, as can the sound of birds singing in the summer under an open window. I'm sure many of you are annoyed by it. And you're lucky if you don't live in South America, where white bellbirds live. They're the loudest birds in the world. Usually they do not sing without stopping. They destroy our ears with their sounds surgically at times. But this is not very pleasant either. And if there are a lot of white bellbirds, then their singing can really drive you crazy or make you lose your hearing, at least temporarily. Their volume is 125 decibels. By the way, such cries are made by the white bellbird during the mating period. This is how it tries to attract the attention of females and beat male rivals in vocal performance. The bird is small, about the size of a pigeon, but technically it screams louder than an airplane taking off. But how? It's all about the large lower larynx, developed abdominal muscles, strong ribs, and wide mouth. In addition, before starting to impress females, the white bellbird swallows air and inflates its throat, which allows it to increase the amplitude of sound. The same method is used by musicians playing wind instruments. Howler monkey. Since we're talking about music, this animal will be right on point. Only if the white bellbird is compared to a brass band, then the howler monkey is a typical metal band frontman. Just check out its growling and screaming. If you don't have a lead singer with a powerful voice for your band, why not use the services of these monkeys that live in Central and South America? Joking aside, the vocal abilities of howler monkeys are really amazing. The volume of their roars can reach 128 decibels. That's close to the threshold of intolerability. Howler monkeys have well-developed throat sacs in which sound resonates perfectly. That's why they manage to produce such extreme vocals which can be heard at a distance of up to 3 miles. And that's without any microphones, unlike rockers. Usually, howler monkeys scream at dawn and dusk, as well as if they're disturbed. The loudest are males. Females also scream, but quieter and higher. As in the case of other animals, screaming is used as a means of communication or deterrence. But mostly these primates use their shrill roars to warn others of their location and to avoid territorial conflicts. What do we know about bats? That they live in caves, sleep upside down, and fly spookily in the sky, right? I think everyone knows that, but far fewer people know that among bats there are some of the loudest animals in the world. I'm talking about bulldog bats. They're also called fishing bats. They live in South America. These bats are small, weighing less than 3.5 ounces, plus they're barely over 4 inches long, but they scream so loud. According to various sources, the volume of their sounds ranges 137–188 decibels. That's the volume at which fighter jets fly. Also about the volume at the epicenter of a fireworks explosion. Fortunately, nature has taken pity on South Americans, otherwise they would all have gone deaf long ago. Still remember that thing about frequencies? There it is again. Bulldog bats scream very loudly, but they produce sounds at an extremely high frequencies of 20 kilohertz and higher. The human ear can't pick up those sounds. At most, we'll be able to hear some crackling if we put the bat to the ear or put a microphone to it. And that's just the lower range of its vocal range. These bats use these sounds for echolocation, like other bats. It helps them track each other, analyze space, and find fish in the water. The second name of the animals speaks vividly about their dietary preferences. Most animals use their loud sounds to communicate with each other or to scare enemies away. The pistol shrimp is a different story. It uses its loudness to destroy its opponents. The fact is that the pistol shrimp is an amazing sniper. The name fits the creature just perfectly. One of its claws actually works on the principle of a pistol. The shrimp clenches and unclenches its claw and does so with incredible speed. As a result, the animal shoots at the enemy with a jet of hot water at a speed of 62 miles per hour. The water becomes hot because the insane speed makes the snap cause a flash of light and heats up the claw to 9,032 degrees Fahrenheit for a moment. That's 4 to 5 times hotter than lava. At the same time, the ultra-fast shot is accompanied by a sound, just like a real gun. At the moment, the volume of the shrimp shot reaches 200 to 210 decibels. This volume, combined with the shot, stuns the opponent, and the arthropod easily eats it. Also, by such tricks, the pistol shrimp can drive predators away. And finally, the leaders in terms of loudness in the animal world. Many of you have been waiting for them, and yes, they are whales, of course. In general, all whales are loud in one way or another, but I'll tell you about the loudest of them. The first one is the blue whale. Everything's kind of logical here. This is the largest animal on the planet. It has an incredible mass, insane length, gigantic organs, and therefore its voice should be phenomenal by default. It is. The volume of the blue whale's sounds can reach up to 188 decibels. Our ears are saved by 2 factors. Firstly, blue whales scream deep underwater, where their sound is spread over a distance of more than 930 miles. Secondly, it's the good old frequencies again. Blue whales scream and cry at quite low frequencies. Our ears can hear them, but we still don't go deaf. It would be much worse if blue whales were to roar at middle frequencies. By the way, scientists do not fully understand why blue whales produce calls, whether to exchange information or to warn of danger or just for communication and acquaintance. Well, another whale, the sperm whale, is considered the absolute world leader. This huge creature, with a giant head, screams at a volume of 236 decibels per micropascal per meter. Interestingly, the sounds of sperm whales are different. They can roar and sing, or they can click, and it sounds unusual and very loud, at least for other sperm whales, which are guided by the sounds of their congeners. From the loudest animals, I suggest moving on to the rarest. Stay tuned. The rarest and most unusual red animals in the world are waiting for you next. Red lory. Let's start with a very beautiful parrot. The red lory lives in the Malay archipelago in South Asia, where it can be found in tropical forests. There, this red-haired bird feeds on flowers, pollen, fruit, nectar, and insects. Red color is the most common among representatives of the species, but it's not easy to find completely red lories. More often, they have inserts and flecks of blue, purple, or black. Like other parrots, the red lory can be taught to speak. You certainly won't get bored with it because the red lory is a playful, bright, and theatrical feathered creature. In South Asia, some people keep it as a pet. Madagascar tomato frog. That's when the name speaks for itself. While most common frogs settle for the traditional green color, this amphibian from Madagascar is as red as a tomato. Not only does this color look epic, but it also serves an important function. It warns potential predators that the prey in question is inedible. And it's not a bluff. When in danger, the tomato frog releases a toxic and sticky substance. It can glue the jaws of the predator and cause an allergic reaction in humans. Better not to eat such tomatoes. Siamese fighting fish. The next animal in the episode is interesting for several reasons at once. First, it's a fish of unusual red color. However, there are also other colors, but today we're interested in red creatures. Secondly, it has an interesting voile tail plumage and long fins, which distinguish the Siamese fighting fish from many other aquatic inhabitants. But most importantly, these fish got their name for a reason. They really fight and have fights with each other. Some biologists even consider the Siamese fighting fish the most aggressive fish in the world, and even the most aggressive representatives of the fauna in general. In Asia, these fish are still sometimes bred specifically for fighting, like some fighting dogs or roosters. However, most of the time these fish are not bought for that, but so they can create beauty and comfort in the house and please the eye. Red scorpion fish. If the Siamese fighting fish is only dangerous to other fish, and above all to its own congeners, then this creature is also a danger to humans because it's venomous. Not for nothing, it's called a scorpion, right? The red scorpion fish lives near the seabed, where it merges with the environment and stalks its prey, mainly other fish, crustaceans, and mollusks. Numerous spines located on the body of the scorpion fish have venomous glands. To be pricked by them is quite painful, but people are not confused by this, and they actively catch this dangerous fish in the Atlantic Ocean. Blood red glider. I bet you've never seen a butterfly with such a bright color. There are many beautiful individuals among these insects, but the blood red glider is especially beautiful. These amazing creatures belong to the Nymphalidae family and live in Central America. The butterflies of this species are not very well studied, but we can say for sure about their color. The dorsal part and wings of the blood red glider are colored red, while the color of the abdominal side varies from olive to grayish or brown shades. Scarlet ibis. This amazing bird can be found in the north of South America, from Venezuela and Guyana to Brazil and the island of Trinidad. The scarlet ibis, or the guara, is interesting because it's literally completely red, which is unusual even for other red animals. As a rule, all the plumage and legs of the bird are colored bright red. At the same time, males and females look the same, which can cause confusion even among scientists. The bird is also a full-fledged national symbol. The scarlet ibis is depicted on the coat of the arms of Trinidad and Tobago, which is located in the Caribbean Sea. Next to the ibis on the coat of arms, there's the cacrico, another national bird of the state. Red velvet mite. As a rule, mites are black or gray. In addition, they're also small, which makes them very difficult to see in thickets. The red velvet mite, on the other hand, is a completely different story. Due to the fact that it differs from its mite relatives by its bright orange-red color, it's almost impossible not to notice it. Plus, it looks more like a small spider than a mite. The red velvet mite is an active predator when mature, while when young, it parasitizes on other insects and even some spiders. Northern cardinal. If you've played Angry Birds at least once, you're definitely familiar with the next animal of this episode. The northern cardinal, named Red, is the main character of this game. The bird is also known as the common cardinal or the red cardinal. Like the scarlet ibis, the red cardinal is a symbol, but not of a country. It's a symbol of 7 states in the USA. In fact, the red bird is found there, but it can also be found in Canada, Mexico, and even in Guatemala. The red cardinal impresses by its beauty and richness of color. The males are more colorful than the females. The females have a more modest coloration, so ornithologists and fans of exotic value the males more. They're ready to pay a lot of money to purchase this feathered creature. The price for one bird can reach $800. Cherry shrimp. Who would have thought a shrimp could be unusual and interesting? The cherry shrimp is a variety of freshwater shrimp from Taiwan, as well as some provinces of mainland China. Cherry shrimp have recently become very popular with aquarists. They're often kept at home. They're not fastidious in food, they're easy to look after, and most importantly, they look very unusual. Red panda. Everyone knows about the common giant pandas, but in addition to them, there are also red pandas. Otherwise, they're called lesser pandas. If I can put it that way, these creatures can be called more authentic pandas than the giant black and white ones, because if those belong to the bears family, then these belong to the Aluridae, or the true panda family. Red pandas are like a combination of a fox, a cat, and a bear. They have a very unusual appearance, which is also complemented by an incredible color. Red pandas are small. They weigh about 11 to 13 pounds and are about 20 inches long. In general, they do not differ much from domestic cats in terms of size. By the way, they have something else in common with domestic cats, a thick and fluffy tail. Red pandas often use it as a blanket to keep themselves warm. Red color in animals looks very cool, but in the world you can find other creatures with unusual colors. I suggest you take a look at them. Keep watching to see a Spider-Man lizard, an albino zebra, and a yellow penguin. Spider-Man lizard. Actually, this lizard is called the Wanza flat-headed rock agama, but it will be much better to name it after the famous superhero. Firstly, it's easier, and secondly, just look at it. This lizard is a real Spider-Man. Its color matches the Peter Parker costume. It feels like this lizard is about to finish its business and fly to save New York City from criminals. If so, it'll take a long time to fly since these reptiles live in Africa. There, they bask in the sun, feed on locusts, grasshoppers, and worms, and are often kept as pets. Surprisingly, these creatures are very docile, tame, and live a good life in captivity. Albino zebra. I think everyone knows what albino animals are. These creatures are usually completely white. But what would an albino zebra look like? Is it also completely white? Not exactly. It looks as if it has just lost its saturation. It still has stripes, but they're not black. It's as if nature didn't have enough paint to make them stand out and be really dark. Although albino zebras look unusual, there are few advantages of such a feature. First, zebra stripes play an important protective role. They confuse predators and often keep many blood-sucking insects away from zebras. For this reason, albino zebras may be more vulnerable. Second, such animals are vulnerable in general. It's harder for them to hide from predators, they're affected more by sunlight, and it's harder for them to find a mate. And most importantly, they have a weak immune system, which means they die from various diseases more often than others. Yellow penguin. Next, we have one of the rarest animals in the whole world in general. This yellow penguin caused quite a sensation when it was seen and filmed in Antarctica several years ago. By the way, it was the first time anyone saw such a penguin at all. Before that, scientists could only guess about the existence of such an individual. This penguin is distinguished from its usual black and white congeners by its yellow look. In general, emperor penguins have yellow elements of their bodies, for example, the collar. However, this individual retained the yellow feathers and lost all the dark ones. Scientists still don't understand what caused such a color, but according to one theory, it's about leucism, a disease in which animals partially lose pigmentation of the outer coat. Unfortunately, as in the case with the albino zebra, the penguin's unique appearance does not play into its hands. The yellow color is too noticeable for predators and unattractive to the opposite sex. Whale. Everyone knows that whales are the largest animals in the world at the moment, but not everyone knows that whales are the largest animals ever in all of history as a whole. At least in terms of weight, they've never been equaled. The Antarctic blue whale is the largest of all its congeners. This blue whale subspecies always amazes people with its incredible size. Even ordinary individuals of this subspecies can grow up to 100 feet in length and weigh more than 150 tons. But there are also certain individuals which surpass everyone in general. An individual that was photographed relatively recently can be called the largest whale, as well as the largest animal in history. I'm talking about the blue whale, which was seen in September 2012 off the coast of Australia. They had time to catch it on camera, and on the basis of these materials, scientists concluded that the giant weighed more than 200 tons. This is the absolute record among all whales on the planet. As for length, the record holder is a female blue whale, which was found by whalers in 1926 near the South Shetland Islands in Antarctica. At that time, whaling was not yet illegal, so they were able to properly measure the female. Its length was 110.1 feet. Interestingly, there were longer animals in history, but you'll learn more about them later. In the meantime, let's take a look at the main modern giant of the land, the African bush elephant. This is the largest land mammal. It's normal for elephants of this species to grow up to 10 to 13 feet in height, 20 to 23 feet in length, and weigh about 5 to 6 tons. Even this is very impressive, but it's not the limit. In 1974, for example, hunters shot an African bush elephant in Angola, which weighed 12 tons. Unfortunately, there's no footage of this record breaker, or it hasn't survived, but we can imagine what it looked like. It looks like this to me. Even from a distance, this big creature looks very big, and when it gets close to the car, it's really scary. I think it might well weigh 12 tons or even more. Apparently, this elephant is old, which means it's gained a lot of mass over its long life. Giraffe. This is another famous African giant. Giraffes are not as massive as elephants, but they're very tall. Even at birth they are. A newborn baby, if it can be called such at all, is already about 6 feet tall and weighs 110 pounds. When the giraffe grows up and becomes a full-fledged adult, its height is about 13 to 16 feet. But there have been larger creatures. For example, the amazing giraffe named George. As you can see, feeding him was not an easy task. George, kept in Chester Zoo in England, was 19 feet tall, and according to some reports he was even taller, more than 20 feet tall. It's said that George was rather cheeky and a hooligan. He took advantage of his height and took off hats from visitors when they approached his enclosure. The current record holder is also impressive. It's a male named Forrest, who lives at the zoo in the Australian state of Queensland. 3 years ago, he got into the Guinness Book of World Records for his incredible height. The measurement procedure was not an easy one. In order to understand exactly how many inches a giraffe had, a special measuring pole was set up near the place where he fed, and Forrest was photographed against it for several months. As a result, they came to the conclusion that his height was 18.7 feet. That's very impressive. Let's go back to the sea, where you can find quite a few other big animals besides whales. Sharks immediately come to mind. If we talk about predatory sharks, they're not the largest in the world. This is understandable because with huge size, it would be very difficult for them to hunt. Nonetheless, there are record breakers among them. For example, a female great white shark named Deep Blue, who has already become a legend among divers. First of all, it's because she's not aggressive. She often allows divers to swim next to her and actively pose for the camera. Secondly, Deep Blue gained fame because of her incredible size. Scientists believe that this is the largest great white shark in the world at the moment. She is 21.9 feet long and weighs 5,511 pounds. It's not even surprising that many people consider it a direct descendant of Megalodon. Thanks for watching. What impressed you the most in this episode? Let me know in the comments and subscribe to the channel.